Welcome to the Wealth Across Generations podcast. Hello and welcome to the Wealth Across Generations podcast. I'm your host, David Allen, the podcast where families learn to thrive at all levels and grow together. Here we explore ideas and answers to how families can be successful, happy, emotionally intelligent, and resilient. Today we're going to talk about something called boundaries, but first, here is why boundaries are so important. You see, society has systematically taught us not to have boundaries. It started off where it often begins: school, particularly public school. Being made to sit and listen to other people talk for 6 to 8 hours a day. No say in how you spend your time. People bullying you? Too bad. You get to stay in the same classroom as your tormentors. Start a fight? Guilty. End a fight? Guilty. Stand there, get punched in the face and do nothing? Guilty. May I use the bathroom, please? Can I get a hall pass, please? Don't like what you're learning? Too bad. You have to learn whatever other people tell you. Now, as a teacher, I've run into so many students who say they have no dreams. It's probably 20 to 30% at this point. They haven't had the ability to explore anything that could interest them. If you care at all about family wealth, you won't send your kids to public school unless you literally have no other choice. From school, we moved to TV, where people became passive viewers of limited choices rather than active participants. And then it finishes with the internet, with infinite choices online that at the end of the day all lead to 2 or 3 thought patterns on any major issue, combined with a globalist worldview that asks us to care deeply about every single thing. It's paralyzing. And the result is, since caring is a finite daily resource, and you can get exhausted with what's happening on the other side of the country or the world to people you've never met and maybe don't even like, you don't have enough left to care about what's happening in your own community. So there's school, there's TV, and then came postmodernist philosophy. Now, I'm not a philosopher. I don't know exactly when it came, but I know it's fairly recent. It's a 20th century invention, at least when it started to really get mainstream. And postmodernist philosophy basically claims that there's no one universal truth. So you shouldn't judge what's right or wrong or the actions of others as good or bad. And in case you're worried about having to think or make your own decisions about what's right and wrong, fortunately, the experts on TV are here to do that for you. Just don't blink, take your drugs, and update your social media profile in support of the current thing. It continued with urbanization and having to live with extra stacks of rules to accommodate a denser population. Now we have building codes, municipal codes, zoning laws, HOAs. Despite how well-intentioned many of these may be, it led to more and more people having a say in what you do with your own space. The process was accelerated with the legal system. Society is so litigious that the wrong word from your mouth could land you in court. And notice how it's always the other people and not you that get to decide which words are right and which words are wrong. I mean, come on. Where's postmodernism when we needed it, huh? I thought we got to choose for ourselves what was right and what was wrong. There's no objective standard and that other people should not judge us. Well, apparently in the courtroom, that's not how it works. And now we drive with dash cams on our cars, record our own crucial conversations, and document events meticulously like we're about to get audited whenever there's a disagreement. Oh, you're not yet? Sweet summer child. You are one bad day away from being your own defense attorney at work. Then it was rules for publicly traded companies, corporate policy, HR departments. As the bureaucracy grew, your life fit into a smaller and smaller box. The conditions, covenants, and restrictions on your own existence grew longer and longer, until life became little different from jail, but with Netflix and better food. And half the time, you have to use a VPN to get the good Netflix shows you want, but don't tell them that. Then some well-intentioned people decided we were being too hard on the kids, so we should just not discipline them at all. And to be clear, I'm not talking about corporal punishment. Corporal punishment doesn't improve anyone's character, is fear-based, and should not have been used in over 98% of the situations it was. I'm just talking about consequences. Detention, suspension, community service, extra assignments, device confinements, and 5 minutes without distractions to reflect on one's own choices. And so starting with the youngest and gradually moving up, our society has shifted from being a mechanism of enforcing standards of behavior and ethics with every bit the effectiveness as a real legal code, to a system of using established institutions to protect people from the consequences of their own actions. What I call a padded room civilization. Well, if everyone's wearing a straitjacket in their own well-lit cell lined with Pepto-Bismol pink-cushioned walls, eventually there's nobody left working to keep the lights on. Teachers quit teaching after 1 year or less. Police stop arresting violent criminals if compromised DAs just let them out hours later. False accusations start flying, as those caught doing so fail to reap the punishments due to the accused had the accusation stuck. The abortion clinics will start installing automatic revolving doors to handle the traffic. We'll move from welfare checks to universal basic income, which will do the same thing to consumer goods prices that interest-free student loans did for college tuition rates. Those HR departments we were talking about will keep posting fake jobs, so desperate people will waste thousands of hours applying to jobs that don't exist and that they don't even like, even for application tracking software to filter out their applications before they even reach a person. Unless, of course, these applicants keyword stuff their application and their resumes like a black hat internet marketer from the early 2000s. And don't forget about every corporation moving their products from something you own to a subscription service. You almost thought you owned that thing you paid for. And before you think of buying something else, assuming one decent tech company decides not to monthly fee their customers into oblivion, we've got central bank digital currencies coming our way, tethered to biometric ID, which will be hosted by a gatekeeping tech company named after an evil tool from Lord of the Rings. The Two Towers was a cautionary tale, not an instruction manual. Count me out. Everything for sale in this brave new world doesn't convey real ownership anyway. Just let me live in the woods instead, so I can wait this nonsense out, because the future is stupid. Or we can learn about boundaries and take our lives back 1 square meter at a time. And maybe most of the stuff I mentioned can only be slowed down, but the things we can't fully control have programmed us into not doing anything about the things we can. And that's the point I'm trying to make. So, what are boundaries? A boundary is a rule you enforce to keep the good in and the bad out. Its purpose is to protect you and the people you love. Since many of my listeners are Christian, at the very least culturally so, it may be surprising to learn that grace, the very means we are to use to show kindness to others, is impossible without boundaries. If you're a shepherd and you herd sheep for a living and you have no fences, you can only hate the wolves. If you have fencing, you don't have to hate the wolves. You just have to scare them off when the sheep need to eat outside. And there are wolves. What are the wolves? Your situation may be different, but here are some examples of some wolves. The wolf is the person who takes the handicapped parking spot despite being fully able-bodied. The wolf is the person who bullied your child at school. There are boatloads of wolves from a country who shall remain nameless, whose values and culture conflict with your own. They aren't coming legally, and they don't plan to leave. Wolves are the gossips. They are the supervisors at work who insist the workplace is a happy family, and they need you to be a team player by working 4 hours of overtime right now while they leave early. Wolves are the people you know who celebrated and called for more when a religious family man was gunned down at a college in Utah just for being good at talking to people he disagreed with. Wolves can be the family member who borrow things from you, but conveniently forget to tell you until you discover something is missing. In short, whenever somebody isn't trustworthy and they can threaten something that is important to you, they are wolf enough. I'm not saying that they're not human, I'm saying they have wolf-like tendencies. And even those we love can be wolf enough without boundaries, enforced with consistency and compassion. If you don't have boundaries, you are denying the essence of who the wolves are. You are denying their wolfness. This can be a disaster for a number of reasons. First, if you let wolves come in and hurt the people or things you love, you are sending the message that you don't have anything or anyone that you love enough to protect. I don't know if that says more about you or about what you're failing to protect. Jesus did no such thing. He laid down his life to redraw the boundary lines entirely. Those who claim morality as the reason for not establishing any boundaries to protect those they claim to love are like a Christian of Tokugawa-era Japan choosing to trample on the Fumi-e, which were images of Jesus or the Virgin Mary, to avoid persecution by the emperor. Our modern equivalent would be to buy a doormat with Jesus' face on it voluntarily and claim we bought it because we love Jesus so much. Socially acceptable cowardice. Either you're afraid the wolves will get angry when you enforce a boundary, or you don't really love those you claim to value. Second, if people aren't challenged by boundaries, they might truly never know what they're doing is fully wrong. Being convicted of wrong is an unskippable step to repentance and transformation. And transformation is the ultimate miracle of human existence. Third, every action is a thesis consisting of an investment of our resources and risk. This is true for all, from the person jaywalking to the post office, to a broke law student in St. Petersburg robbing an elderly pawnbroker. Every action is a thesis, a statement of belief about how the world works. If somebody plans to do wrong knowingly, they do so under the thesis that any consequence they may face is not high enough of a cost not to do wrong. A firm enforceable boundary adjusts the risk-reward ratio in the mind of the wrongdoer, and that may affect every category of wrong they would otherwise act upon. A public enough and strict enough punishment amplifies this effect across many people. The stereotype of this is the thief in the Middle East getting his hand chopped off. It's memorable for the fact that it is brutal, and it changes our risk-reward algorithms. If we were going to steal after hearing about that, we'd be more likely to do it in Toronto than Mecca. So, we want to change the thesis that people are using for their decisions. Fourth, it's often the case that wolves, especially those with no intent to change, will telegraph who and what they are. Maybe it's carelessness. Maybe they feel more justified in their wolf-like behavior by telling you what they are going to do before they do it. But if we recognize a wolf when we see one, call it out for being what it is, and take appropriate defensive measures, we don't have to be mad at the wolf. Wolves eat sheep. That's what they do. If you let a wolf into your stone-fenced, 8-foot-high sheepfold and it has dinner, you should feel neither betrayed nor surprised. It's just like that Oscar Brown poem about the snake, which gained a resurgence in popularity back in 2015. A woman saves a snake from the cold by bringing it into her home. After it is nursed back to health, it bites her. Shocked at the ungrateful reptile, she accuses it, and it replies that she knew it was a snake from the very beginning. Therefore, why be surprised? If the woman cared about the snake and had boundaries, she might have brought it to a vet or a zookeeper or a herpetologist, which is a person who studies snakes and not herpes, apparently. She could have started a fire next to it while leaving it outside. Any number of things. But if she valued her life, she would not bring it into her home and next to her body. Suffice it to say, acknowledging the wolfishness of the wolf and the snakiness of the snake gives us empathy and grace. Grace to not become overly violent and maintain a spirit of forgiveness. Empathy to know how the wolf and the snake think, which is a tool for either compassion or defeating them. Now that we know that society has trained us not to have boundaries, we learned what a boundary is, why it matters, and why we should never deny the wolf its wolfness, let's get into how to actually establish boundaries. We are going to channel our terrible twos again and develop a love affair. This love affair betrays nobody, though sometimes people will react as though it does. Fortunately, this affair is not with a person, but with a word, and that word is no. profound in its simplicity, technically one of the shortest possible words, easy to spell, so easy to say even a 2-year-old can say it, and they do. Think about something you don't want to say yes to. Perhaps something you need to say no about, and who you need to say it to. A good example is choosing not to spend time with friends whom you have determined are untrustworthy. Now, what I'll describe right here is a worst-case scenario and only one way to navigate it out of many. I'm not even saying this is the best way to navigate a difficult boundary enforcement, but it is a way. Please avoid unnecessary conflict with people in authority and try not to burn bridges with people. But if you are in a high-stakes situation or in low-trust communities, your situation is going to look a lot more like what follows. If you are highly agreeable by nature or training, the problem is not in saying the word no, but in dealing with people's reactions to it. Pay attention to what feelings a person tries to make you feel when you say no. If you walk out of that conversation feeling like a bad human, or if they threaten you, then that is a wolf in human clothing, howling. When you run their howls through your internal wolf translator app, in English you can read the words, "Please respect my wolfiness by keeping the boundary." When you say no and a low-trust person asks you why, you can use any justification you want to. Personally, I find it best not to give reasons or delineate the boundaries because a wolf will either attempt to redraw the boundary, as if they didn't hear what you just said, or think you are negotiating with it. Remember the 3 Little Pigs story? Before the wolf tries to blow the house down, it first knocks on the door and asks to be let in. If you must give reasons, give them in a way that makes it seem the concrete is already dry on that choice. Examples include, "It's already been decided days ago. I have a prior commitment. I made a promise to be somewhere else that day." None of these are true. The promise can be to yourself. Your success may give you a feeling of triumph, which can cause others to think you derive some pleasure from denying them. You do, but it's not because of them. It's because you are protecting what is most important to you, and you see yourself doing it. That's self-respect. But sometimes my self-respect can look like sadism, and my goal at this point is to get so used to saying no until I can take that feeling for granted enough to have a straight face. One thing you can have to more consistently reinforce a boundary is some greater mission or purpose. Family is amazing. God is even better because people can't see God, and this is one of the few times I'm thankful for that because they can't argue with something they can't see. It could be career development. It could be writing your new sci-fi epic if that's what inspires you. You don't have to tell them anything, this is just for you internally. And if they push back, you can use a red herring. Yes, I am saying you can use a logical fallacy, but I will not tell you to lie. If they say, "Why can't you do it?" you respond with a different answer. You tell them, "You can do it if you want. That's your decision and you are free to do it. I just choose not to, which is why I'm saying no." This is not what they asked, and you are giving them something that they already have. But asserting their freedom to do something implies that you, as a different person, have the freedom to do something else. If they push back again, you go full direct. "I already told you that you have the freedom to do that if that's what you want. That's your right. I do have the freedom to do something different if I want. Right?" If you need to pause to write this down, that's fine, but I'll include the script in the Substack, so subscribe there. I plan on having some extra content behind a paywall, like extra interview content, AI prompts to further explore the topics, resources behind each podcast, and action steps to take. I won't have all those for every podcast, just as inspiration strikes, but I plan on the first 10 episodes being fully available, whether you pay or not. So you brought them into the open. Any witnesses to this conversation will interpret further pushback on the part of the wolf as saying the quiet part out loud. That the wolf thinks you don't have the same rights as them and that you shouldn't. But keep the conversation as private as you can, especially if your skill at verbal conflict is very low. If you live in a one-party state where you can legally record a conversation as long as you're a part of it, record the conversation if you want, so you can learn to do a post-game analysis of it. Now, the wolf has 2 choices here. They can escalate and hope that they won't lose face if you continue to say no, or you can give them an out. In conflict, always give the losing side an exit. When backed against the wall with no exit, an opponent will fight like hell, and that's not the goal here. And here's their exit. You'll say something like this: "I'm pretty sure that's not what you really meant. Thanks for inviting me, though. I'll see you later." Now, mostly, this example was tailored to someone getting pressured by their peers to go and do something they don't want to do anymore. Results may vary if you try the same script in a hierarchical situation like your boss, your drill sergeant, your parole officer, or your parents. Now, final step, you will need to endure the final word as you walk away. Some people are so terrifying with the final word, I can't help but admire it. They'll say one line, perfectly calculated to blow your fuse. But you won't blow your fuse, because you know it's coming, and you know how they want you to feel. Like a loser, like a bad Christian, like part of a cult, like a traitor, like you can't survive without them, like you only care about yourself, like you aren't much of a man, or you were kind of a witch with a capital B anyway. Survive the final word. Let it be evidence to the court in your mind that what you did today was the right move. Congratulations, you've just enforced a boundary, and it only gets easier from there. One survival tip is to avoid "I'm sorry, but" in your boundary. Try not to use "I'm sorry. I know you're just being polite," but emotional manipulators will take that and use it as an apology and try to crowbar their way into a guilt trip, and that's not where you want to be. Now, everything I just described here is worst-case scenario. Usually just saying this will work for 98% of situations. "No, I can't because I have something else to do." Followed up with, "Not this time." And that will work for most low-stakes situations. And that's exactly where I want you to do this first. If you're a level 1 boundary enforcer, you don't fight the boss on your first time. Practice with situations like you're in school and someone's trying to borrow a calculator or pen when you need it. Or you're at home and your colleague is sending non-urgent work messages after hours. Or if your mother-in-law is visiting you and your spouse's home without calling first. These are lower stakes, and hopefully with high-trust people. By high trust, I'm meaning 50 to 80% or more trustworthiness, where boundary enforcement will be met with respect and lead to a continued successful and happy relationship afterwards. And finally, remember the values. Your values are why you are setting the boundary. If your family hasn't developed a list of values to live by yet, or you haven't chosen any values for your own, don't worry. We can talk about that on a future podcast. And everybody has values whether they've written about them or thought about them or not. An example of a value could be something from my personal life. I value financial responsibility. It shows up under my family values as responsibility and abundance. So I usually set aside a certain percent of my income to help people who need help. If people ask for more than that, I say no, because I need to be financially responsible. We don't help the poor by becoming poor ourselves, and being financially irresponsible, if you are consistent enough, is a sure way to becoming poor. Now, if you choose financial responsibility as your value, saying no to the person who always asks to borrow money and never pays it back is in fact saying yes to your valuing financial responsibility. See how that works? Values become your friends over time. Consistently saying yes to those values builds your reputation. And remember, with most of the people in our lives, we still want to have relationships with them. Most of our relationships are only part wolf at worst. The friend who talks too long on the phone is still our friend. The wife who starts asking for you to do things as soon as you get home from work without even letting you sit down for 5 minutes first, she's still your wife. The sister who takes too long in the bathroom when you're trying to get ready for school is still your sister. The cousin who overwrote your game save when he came over for the Thanksgiving holiday is still your cousin. 99 times out of 100, boundaries are to preserve and enrich relationships, not to destroy them. Hopefully this helps you understand boundaries. Full disclosure, I have been very bad at boundaries in the past, so I'm not the best teacher on enforcing them. One of my dreams is to hire a personal assistant to gatekeep between me and the entire world, and his or her main job is to say no to everything that's not directly related to my values and immediate projects. Until then, I have a long way to go at getting better at boundaries. But I am one of the best in the world at understanding what bad boundaries and no boundaries will cost you. The book Boundaries by Henry Cloud and John Townsend is a good resource for learning more about this important skill, so I definitely recommend it. A lot of the principles for enforcing boundaries came from that book. If there are people in your family who are good at boundaries and you can trust them to be part of this conversation, share this podcast with them. They may be another valuable part of your family wealth group. After the podcast, ask some questions with your group. You can ask any questions that you want, but some great ones include: 1. Have you ever set a boundary in a difficult situation? 2. Ask the elders in your family. Have there been family members in the past who aren't with us today that paid a heavy price for not enforcing clear boundaries? What are the stories there? 3. What values as a family can we agree on for better enforcing the boundaries we want to set? 4. How do we help young people in our family to learn how to set boundaries with their peers and even with family so that they can be respectful and kind while also free to speak about what they need? 5. Who in our family can we come to for help on enforcing boundaries when we need to do so with someone outside of the family? 6. Ask children. What fights could have been avoided? And what friendships can you keep or lose by setting and keeping good boundaries? How can you make more friends if you need to? 7. How can we de-escalate conflict that ensues inside the family when someone sets or enforces a boundary confrontationally or with a low level of finesse? 8. Have you ever had trouble accepting boundaries, and how can the group help you? And 9. Have you ever had trouble setting boundaries, and how can the group help you? Boundaries keep the good in and the bad out, helping us all get more of what we want out of life and less of what we don't. This will give you the white space to build all 8 forms of capital. Well, 9, in fact, if you include human capital. For future reference, I'll refer to that model as the 9 forms of capital. Until then, I'll see you on the next episode of the podcast, and remember, the struggles you face today, you not only can solve, but you can solve for the generations that come after you. Join the Substack for more information, including the worst-case scenario boundary enforcement example script, discussion questions mentioned earlier in the episode, and links to resources.